She had just $11 to her name after 36 years of marriage. And if that wasn't devastating enough, the one thing her husband had never once mentioned, a small rusted storage key hidden deep in his dresser, was about to unravel everything she thought she knew about her life, her past, and the man she had trusted more than anyone else. Linda Harper sat alone at her kitchen table, the silence in the house feeling louder than any argument they had ever had. Louder even than the hospital machines that had gone still just 2 weeks earlier. And she stared at the thin bank statement in her trembling hands, as if looking at it long enough might change the numbers printed across it. But it didn't. It never did. It stayed the same cold, unforgiving truth. $11.42. After decades of shared decisions, quiet sacrifices, and what she had always believed was a careful, modest life built on honesty and stability. Somehow in the span of days, it all collapsed into something she couldn't recognize. The calls had started gently at first. Polite voices asking about missed payments, balances she didn't understand, accounts she had never seen before. But as the days passed, the tone shifted, sharpened, hardened into something more urgent, more accusing, and Linda found herself flipping through drawers, searching for answers in places she had never thought to look before, her heart sinking deeper with every unopened letter, every overdue notice, every unfamiliar name tied somehow to her. Husband Daniel, a man she had shared a bed with for 36 years, a man whose routine she could recite like a script. Coffee at 6, work by 8, dinner by 7, asleep by 10 o'clock. And yet now, in the aftermath of his sudden death, she was discovering entire pieces of his life that had existed completely outside of hers. She didn't cry when the bank told her the savings account was empty. She didn't cry when she learned the house was weeks away from foreclosure. And she didn't cry when she realized that whatever retirement they had planned for had already been spent long before she even knew it existed, because the shock had wrapped itself so tightly around her chest that there was no room left for tears. Only a dull, pressing question that refused to leave her alone. How could she have lived beside someone for so long and not known any of this? The house itself felt different now, like it had shifted into something unfamiliar overnight. The walls no longer holding warmth but secrets. Every room carrying a quiet accusation that she had missed something important, something obvious. And yet, the more she thought back, the more she realized how ordinary everything had seemed, how carefully normal Daniel had been. Never extravagant, never reckless, never the kind of man you would expect to hide financial chaos behind a calm expression and predictable habits. A week later, with the deadline looming and no real way to fight what was coming, Linda began packing, not because she was ready to leave, but because she had no choice. Moving slowly through the house, as if each object she touched might explain something if she just held on to it long enough. But nothing did, nothing spoke, nothing revealed anything beyond the life she thought she had lived. And it was only when she reached Daniel's dresser, the one piece of furniture she had avoided until now, that something finally felt different. The drawers were mostly empty, cleared out in the days after his passing when relatives had come and gone, offering condolences that fell hollow now. But in the back of the bottom drawer, tucked beneath an old stack of receipts and a faded tie she barely remembered him wearing, her fingers brushed against something small and cold, something that didn't belong among the ordinary things. And when she pulled out, she found a key, old, slightly rusted, attached to a thin metal tag that had been worn down with time, but still carried 3 faintly engraved numbers. 317. Linda turned it over in her hand, her brow tightening. She tried to place it, tried to connect it to something familiar, but nothing came. No memory, no conversation, no offhand comment from Daniel that might explain why he had something like this hidden away where she would never think to look. And that was the moment something inside her shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to break through the numbness that had held her in place for days. Because this wasn't another bill. It wasn't another mistake. It wasn't something that had spiraled out of control. It was deliberate. Something kept, something concealed, something he had chosen not to tell her about. And for the first time since everything began to fall apart, Linda felt something sharper than confusion, something closer to resolve. She sat down on the edge of bed, the key resting in her palm, and tried to think logically, try to piece together what little she knew. But the truth was painfully simple. Daniel had secrets, and whatever this key belonged was one of them. The question wasn't just what it opened, but why it never mentioned it. Why it let her believe there was nothing hidden between them, even as he quietly maintained something separate, something protected. Outside, a car passed, the sound fading quickly into the distance, and the house fell back into its heavy silence. But this time, it didn't feel quite as empty, because now there was something else there, too. A question waiting to be answered, a door somewhere that this key would unlock. And for reasons she couldn't fully explain, Linda felt certain that whatever was behind would change everything. The key didn't leave Linda's hand that night. She sat in the dim light of the living room long after the sun had disappeared and the house had settled into that hollow quiet she was still trying to get used to, turning it over and over between her fingers, as if it might reveal something new as she looked at it from the right angle. Unit 317. The numbers were faint but intentional, not scratching casually, not something temporary. It had been made to last, to be recognized, which meant Daniel hadn't just stumbled into whatever this belonged to. He had chosen it, kept it, hidden it, and that realization sat heavier than any of the unpaid bills or foreclosure notices, because those could be explained away as mistakes, bad decisions, things spiraling out of control. But this was something else entirely. This was planning. This was silence. By morning, Linda had made up her mind. There was nothing left in the house that could answer her questions. And staying there, surrounded by half-packed boxes and echoes of a life that now felt incomplete, was only making it harder to think. If the key belonged somewhere, she would find out where, not later, not eventually, now. The first storage facility she visited shook its head before she even finished explaining. The second one checked their system and came up empty. By the third, her confidence had started to thin, replaced by that creeping doubt that maybe this was just another dead end, another piece of Daniel's life that would never make sense. But then, at a small facility on the edge of town, one she didn't even remember noticing before, the man at the front desk paused when she mentioned the number. 317, he repeated, glancing at his computer. His fingers moved slowly across the keyboard. And for a moment, Linda felt her heartbeat climb into her throat. Yeah, we got a unit 317. Her grip tightened around the counter. Is it still in use? The man nodded. Hasn't missed a payment in years. Years? The word landed hard. Not months? Not recently. Years? Who's been paying for it? She asked, her voice quieter now, more careful. He shrugged. Autopay setup. Name on the account is Daniel Harper. Linda swallowed, her mouth suddenly dry. Can I access it? He hesitated for a second, then gestured toward the back. If you got the key, it's yours to open. The walk to the unit felt longer than it should have. Rows of identical metal doors stretched out in both directions, each one closed, each one holding something that belonged to someone else's life, someone else's story. But hers, whatever was left of it, was waiting at the end of that row. She stopped in front of it, staring at the lock. For a moment, she didn't move, because up until now, everything had been questions. But the second she turned that key, she would start getting answers, and she wasn't sure she was ready for what those answers might be. Still, her hand moved. The key slid in smoothly, as if it had been used not too long ago, and with a slight turn, the lock clicked open. Linda pulled the door up slowly. It didn't creak the way she expected it to. It lifted cleanly, revealing the dim interior inch by inch until the entire space came into view. And what she saw made her freeze. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't neglect. It wasn't anything like the financial mess she had been left to sort through. It was organized carefully, intentionally. Boxes lined the walls, stacked neatly, and labeled in handwriting she recognized immediately. Daniel's furniture sat wrapped in protective covering, preserved as if it had been placed there with the intention of being used again someday. A small table stood near the front, clear of dust, almost like it had been meant to draw attention. Linda stepped inside slowly, her footsteps echoing softly against the concrete floor. Her eyes moved from one item to the next, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. This wasn't random storage. This wasn't forgotten clutter. This was curated, planned, saved. For what? For who? Her gaze landed on the table. An envelope rested on top of it. Her name was written across the front. Linda felt her chest tighten. He had known. Not everything. Maybe not how or when, but enough. Enough to leave this behind. She picked up the envelope, her fingers trembling as she turned it over. It wasn't sealed tightly, just tucked closed like he had expected it to be open without hesitation. But she hesitated anyway, because opening it meant facing something she hadn't been ready to admit yet, that Daniel hadn't just made mistakes he couldn't fix. He had been preparing for something, and he had done it without her. The air in the unit felt still, almost heavy, as if it had been waiting just like everything else inside it. Finally, she opened the envelope. The paper inside was folded once, neat, simple, like everything else he had left behind. And as she began to read, the silence around her seemed to deepen, as if the entire world had pulled back just enough to let the truth finally come through. Linda didn't turn the page right away. For a long moment, she just sat there on the cold concrete floor of the storage unit, the letter resting in her hands, her eyes fixed on Daniel's handwriting like it might shift if she stared at it long enough. The silence around her felt different now, not empty, but waiting, as if everything in that unit, every box, every covered piece of furniture had been holding its breath for this exact moment. Finally, she exhaled slowly and kept reading. I know this is a part where you're supposed to hate me. Her lips parted slightly, not because she disagreed, but because the thought had already crossed her mind more than once. Not just hate, but confusion, betrayal, even a kind of quiet anger that didn't have anywhere to go. And maybe you should. I lied to you, not in words, but in what I didn't say. And sometimes that's worse. Linda swallowed hard, her grip tightening on the page, because that was exactly it. It wasn't that Daniel had stood in front of her and told her false things. It was that he had let her believe everything was fine, while something else entirely was happening underneath, a silence that stretched for years. But I need you to understand something, even if it doesn't change how you feel. Her eyes moved faster now. I didn't start out trying to hide anything. I started out trying to fix something small. Linda closed her eyes briefly. Small. That's how it always begins. An investment that didn't work. A lot I thought I could pay back before you ever noticed. Then another decision to cover the first. And before I realized it, I wasn't fixing things anymore. I was burying them. The words hit deeper than she expected, not because they were shocking, but because they made sense in a way she didn't want them to. She had seen stress in him now that she thought about it. Moments where he seemed distracted, quieter than usual, brushing things off when she asked if everything was okay, and she had believed him every time. By the time I understood how bad it had gotten, I couldn't bring myself to tell you, because telling you meant watching everything we built fall apart in front of us. A tear slipped down Linda's cheek, this time without resistance, because now it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about fear, about pride, about the fragile way people hold on to normalcy even when it's already slipping away. So I made the worst decision I've ever made. I chose silence. The unit felt heavier, the air thicker, because that one sentence carried everything. But silence doesn't stop consequences. It just delays them. And when they come back bigger than before. Linda nodded faintly, even though no one was there to see it. She knew that now. She was living inside those consequences. I started setting this place up the first time I realized I might not be able to undo what I'd done. Her eyes lifted again, scanning the unit around her. Now it made sense. The order, the care, the intention behind every single thing. This wasn't random. This was built. Every payment I made here was separate. Hidden, yes, but clean. No debt attached. No risk of being taken. I needed to know that if everything else disappeared, something would remain. Linda let out a slow breath. Something would remain. Not everything. Not the life they had. But something. Her gaze drifted toward the wooden chest again, then back to the letter. I didn't tell you because I was ashamed. And because once I started hiding one thing, it became easy to hide everything else. Her jaw tightened slightly. That part still hurt. Maybe it always would. But I never stopped thinking about you. About what would happen if I didn't fix it in time. Linda pressed her lips together. Because despite everything, She believed that, and that made it harder, not easier. The house. I'm sorry about that. I should have protected it. I should have told you before it was too late. She looked down for a moment, the reality of that loss still raw. That house had been her world, and now it was gone. Nothing in this unit replaced that. Nothing could. But what's in this unit, that's yours completely. No one can touch it. Not the banks, not the collectors, not anyone connected to my mistakes. Linda glanced around again, seeing it differently now, not as leftovers, but as something secured, something intentionally kept out of reach from everything else that had gone wrong. The property and the documents. I bought it years ago under your name. I didn't tell you because I didn't want it tied to anything I might ruin later. Her breath caught again. That decision, that one quiet choice years ago, had changed everything, because without it, she would have had nothing. It's not much, but it's yours and it's free. Not much. Linda almost let out a small disbelieving laugh at that, because right now it felt like everything. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve it. Her eyes softened, because that was the first honest thing about this part. Not asking, not assuming, just acknowledging. But I hope one day when this isn't as fresh, you'll understand that I wasn't trying to leave you with nothing. Linda closed her eyes again, letting the words settle. He hadn't succeeded completely, but he hadn't failed completely either. And that space in between, that complicated, imperfect space, was where she now had to live. You gave me a good life, Linda, better than I deserved. I just wish I had been brave enough to be honest with you before it started falling apart. Her grip on the paper loosened slightly, because that was the part that hurt the most. Not the money, not even a house, but the fact that he had chosen silence when there might have still been time to face it together. If you're standing in that unit right now, then at least I did one thing right. I made sure you had a way forward. Linda opened her eyes slowly and looked around, really looked. The furniture, the boxes, the documents, the space itself, a way forward. Not the one she planned, not the one she wanted, but one that existed. And right now, that mattered more than anything. I'm sorry for the life I complicated, and grateful for the one we had. Her vision blurred again, but this time the tears came slower, heavier. Daniel, the letter ended there. No dramatic closing, no final plea, just his name, simple, permanent, gone. Linda sat there for a long time after she finished reading. She didn't rush to move, didn't rush to decide what she felt, because what she felt wasn't simple. It wasn't clean. It was layered. Grief still there. Betrayal still sharp. But now something else had joined them. Understanding, not acceptance, not yet, but the beginning of it. Eventually, she folded the letter carefully, smoothing out the edges as if that small act could somehow preserve it. Then she placed it back in the envelope and held it against her chest for just a moment. Not out of forgiveness, but out of acknowledgement of everything that had been said too late. 3 months later, Linda stood on the porch of the small house from the documents, a quiet stretch of land surrounding it, untouched and still. The kind of place where nothing felt rushed and nothing felt owed. The transition hadn't been easy. Starting over never is. But piece by piece, she had rebuilt something. Not the same life, but a real one. Inside, the furniture from Unit 317 filled the rooms. Not exactly as it had been before, but enough to feel familiar, enough to feel hers. She walked through the house slowly, her footsteps soft against the floor, her hand brushing lightly against the wall as she passed, grounding herself in the reality of it. No debts, no hidden accounts, no surprises waiting in the dark. Just truth. Simple, steady truth. That evening, she sat outside as the sun dipped low, the sky fading into soft shades of gold and gray. The letter rested beside her. She didn't open it. She didn't need to, because she carried it differently now, not as a wound, but as a reminder that people can fail you and still try to leave something behind. That silence can destroy things, but intention can still matter. And that sometimes what saves you isn't what was done right. It's what was protected quietly, waiting for you to find it when everything else is gone. Linda looked out across the land, the quiet no longer heavy but calm, and let out a slow breath. Because this time, her life wasn't built on what she didn't know. It was built on what she did. And that made all the difference.